You can
This
find
is the
all
second
our
episode
episodes on
on
www.lightfootpodcast.com. And I hope to tell someone about the show and give it a positive review wherever podcasts.com. Until we meet again, this is Mike Messner. I hope you enjoy the Run for the Roses conversation. Don't forget to stop and smell it. We'll see you next time for Along the Carefree Highway.
First guest of the evening is truly a poet. He's an artist. He is a friend and an inspiration to anyone who I think who has ever played the guitar or tried to write poetry. Would you please welcome Gordon Lightfoot?
As well as numerous interviews via Zoom and telephone with established as well as indie artists. Mostly Folk is available.
When you're out on the road and you're feeling quite lost, consider the burden of fame. Now, this is my favorite line in the whole song. He, of all people, knew what it was like to be famous, particularly at this point in his life. I mean, he's had Sundown, Cold on the Shoulder, and now Summertime Dream. And I'm talking about just being an international superstar, can't do any wrong kind of thing. If You Could Read My Mind was significant in its own way, but in terms of commercial success, this is as good as it's ever going to get. I mean, 1975, 1976, because after that, the hits start drying up. But I wonder if he's talking about this because he's afraid or anticipating or wondering what the price of fame is. Does he know somehow that one of his kids, as Meredith did, would follow him into public life or into the entertainment industry? Why would he be saying this, consider the burden of fame, if he didn't think that might possibly happen?
Because fame is, I mean, remember that patch, that poster when we were kids, war is not healthy for children and other living things.
Other living beings.
Well, fame is that way too. Fame is not healthy. Fame is not good for people. And it carries, I think, a significant burden. And you can only think that if your child is going to follow in your footsteps into show business, which is an infamously brutal and nasty way to make a living, that he would have some qualms about that he'd want to share. Fame is not all it's cracked up to be. And the ancient Greeks did this with, who was it, Agamemnon, who had to sacrifice his child in order to have the sails filled with wind so that he could go and earn fame and glory in the Trojan War. In other words, to earn his fame and glory, he literally had to sacrifice his family. And he should have remembered the woman who waits too, because his wife was Clytemnestra, I think, and she was waiting with a knife when he got back home. Thought he was going to come home to a hero's welcome, and he got stabbed to death by his angry wife. So
that's what you get for loving me.
So early on, we knew in humanity that fame carries a price and that it comes with dangers. And these dangers are very specific to the experience of fame. And therefore, not a lot of people are out there to give us advice about it. So when somebody who's been through it can tell you what some of the dangers are, you better listen, especially if you're going to follow in those footsteps.
I don't know if he had this idea that it was going to happen that way with his kids, but you talk about people who have been at the top and are talking about fame. Phil Oakes had a great line in one of his songs that went, "Play the chords of love, my friend, play the chords of pain, but if you want to keep your song, don't play the chords of fame." You will end up paying a price for that, the same way Agamemnon did, and the way other people do. I mean, how many show business casualties have we seen in our lives? We don't have time to go into them, but it's certainly a fact.
You could make pretty much the argument that the darkness that they carry with them, the dangers below, they're right around the corner from rehab because of the way their life forces them into these bad situations.
And it's ironic that you say that because rehab wasn't a thing in the 70s. You maybe disappeared for a few years, but the idea, writ large, the idea of rehab didn't really exist the same way we think of it today.
Yeah.
I think most people, kind of pulled up stakes and disappeared for a couple of years. James Taylor did that. Cat Stevens did that. Arguably, Lightfoot did that. That happened a little bit later. It's interesting when we mention the idea of rehab in the context of this discussion. And he who is wise will not criticize when other men fail at the game. It comes back to this idea of being kind to people. He said himself in the liner notes to Gord's Gold, he saw a lot of friends go down the tubes when he was just starting out. And he's not really sure why he made it and the other guys that he knew didn't. He didn't name them by name. We'll never know who they are. But it's empathy. And I think he was way ahead of the curve with empathy because that's something that we didn't even know about, I think, as a culture until maybe the 80s. And even then, we didn't fully understand it until the 90s. And I'm just talking from our own experience as Gen Xers. But now it's something we kind of expect our kids to know and to use and to be conscious of.
I know from my own experience that I was quite taken with my own opinions and with my growth for a very long time, to criticize because it felt like I was doing something. It felt like I was staking a claim, having brave opinions about something or other. And yet, the truth was that in a lot of cases, I didn't really know what I was talking about. I might have been better off. Everybody around me would have been better off. I just kept my mouth shut.
Yeah. I was raised in the same way. I mean, we were both academic brats, and my parents were incredibly well-informed and incredibly opinionated and not afraid to share their opinions with me about things that felt very, very important to me and had a way of making me feel about that small. But again, it comes back to the idea of be an encourager, don't be a discourager. That in itself comes back to the Judeo-Christian heritage that you and I and Gordon grew up in, build up rather than tear down.
Yeah. And for me, it mostly, a lot of it was in music itself. I mean, part of the fun of being a rock and roll fan was talking about who sucked, and telling people, oh, you like them? Oh, man, they suck. And then tell them why they suck. I like those lyrics, man. Those lyrics are shit, man. Come on now. I suppose the danger is that that kind of thing can crystallize, sort of ossify into a bad habit, and you just become insufferable eventually. You got to let people enjoy what they like, and he who is wise will not criticize. It took me a while to learn that. Where music is concerned, especially, I've now come to the conclusion that if you wrote a song, it doesn't matter if I like the song or not. If you wrote a song and performed a song that made millions of people around the world happy, then congratulations. You've done something really special. You've won at life. I've spent the last 35 years just boring kids to death. So who am I to criticize somebody for fault in their lyrics?
I have a brother-in-law up in Northern California who was criticizing some musician years ago. And I looked at him and I said, well, he's the one who's got the Learjet. You're the one sitting here. Beware of strange faces and dark, dingy places. Now, this is just common sense. I mean, don't trust just anyone. Don't sign your life over to just anyone. And don't go into places that are clearly unsafe. This is just Gordon being a parent. And I think every father and mother too, but certainly every father has that concern. Don't do something that's terminally stupid. And then he says, be careful while bending the law. And this is an intriguing line because the assumption is that someone is going to bend the law. Not be careful if you bend the law, but careful while bending the law. That implies that you're going to bend the law. You're not going to be on the straight and narrow for your entire life. I guess what I want to know is, do you have a sense of what laws he was talking about?
No, but I think that at some point we all have to decide what our position is with regard to authority. Sometimes that authority will be legal, the law itself, but could it just be the rules at work or something like that? And we have to decide whether we think a particular policy is right for us and for our conscience. I mean, that's part of the point of Thoreau's civil disobedience, is that we exist in a relationship with these laws. And if those laws ask us to do unjust things, Thoreau says that you don't bend it, you break it. But the rest of the time, I think that when we're in the presence of something that is somehow onerous to us, we're going to find a way to bend it. We all have that moment, for example, when the light turns yellow and we could gun it and put people in danger around us, or accept defeat graciously and come to a full and complete stop. Once upon a time, in the fervor of my youth, I would have been more likely to gun it through the intersection. But now I'm thinking a little bit more broadly and saying to myself, yeah, you could get away with it, but is it worth it? You start to develop these little voices in your head that help you make these decisions more justly. Careful while bending the law. Think about it. Think about what you're doing here.
I like the way you said that. And the example that you used, I don't know if Lightfoot ever read Thoreau. I haven't, but who knows what his education was like or if he ever was exposed to it. But everybody who's over 16 can probably relate to the idea of going a little soon on the green light or going a little soon before it turns red. Good illustration there, Mr. Brandt. Good job. You certainly haven't bored me to death today, I'll tell you that. When you're down in the dumps and not ready to deal, decide what it is that you need. And I think about if the stresses of life get you down, which they do and did and will, and you want to isolate, which I can certainly relate to. We have very good friends and family who do the same thing. Try to put your priorities in order and don't just revert to what you want in the moment. And that is much easier said than done. And I think particularly for those of us who struggle with addiction, and Lightfoot was one of those, to decide, okay, is this going to be really what I need? Is this just what I want? Is this going to be the best move for me? He's asking this kid to have a perspective that is going to be very difficult for him to learn unless it's by experience. So I thought it was interesting that he threw that in at that particular time. And then he finishes the thought by saying, is it money or love? Is it learning to live? Or is it the mouth you must feed? And those are all legitimate things. They can all be equally good and proper things at the right time. So it may have been that he's saying, okay, what's the real motivation here and who is this going to benefit? And again, he's asking for perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we all have these struggles in life. It's part of the beauty of it, these inevitable struggles and how we grow as a result of them. I remember after college when nobody wanted me to write anymore. In college, people were always asking me to write things, write my opinions about things. Then that ended. And I found myself saying to my wife, I want to write. I was a terrible, terrible teacher in my first few years. If I meet any of my students from those days, first thing to come out of my mouth is an apology. And so I had this dream of being a writer. But as Gordon Lightfoot puts it, decide what it is that you need. Is it money or love? Is it learning? What was it?
Is it learning to live?
Or is it the mouth you must feed? Yeah. So I had to ask myself, I said, well, wait a second. When you say you want to be a writer, what do you actually mean by that? I had to decide what it is that I meant. Mm-hmm. Do you want to be a famous writer? Do you want to be Hemingway sitting at a cafe somewhere in Paris or in Madrid watching bullfights? You have these sort of childish, youthful fantasies, I suppose. Or do you want to write? Because if you want to write, that's actually a pretty easy thing to do. Just pick up a pen, get a journal, and start writing. And so what happened is I started just writing letters to the editor of the local newspaper. So I achieved a certain kind of level of publication there. So I got a little bit of fame, as it were. I was able to tell myself, or to sort of understand, you had to decide whether you wanted to, quote, be a writer or whether you want to write. And you chose to write, and joy of joys, it brought you pleasure. Mm-hmm. I discovered there was a reason this is what I wanted to do. It's because I enjoyed doing it. I had to set aside all the crazy fantasies about being a famous writer and instead just take satisfaction in the act of personal creation. So it's an example of exactly what he's, in my view, talking about there. You have to decide what it is that you need.
I love the analogy. The first thing I thought of, well, okay, are you going to have your cake and eat it too? But it really comes down to analyzing. Do you need the fame or the money? Do you need to put food on the table? Or do you need to just fulfill that organic desire in you to create? And I think about it in terms of my own podcasting. Do I want to be a famous podcaster, or do I want to be somebody who creates podcasts? In many ways, that choice has been made for me, but
let the market decide.
Let the market decide. Yeah. Okay. Because I'm competing for a whole lot of ears and they only have so much space.
Right. But you take satisfaction in every podcast that you put out. And in the end, that has to be good enough, whether it gains you fame or not. That has to be at the base of it.
You're absolutely right. And there are a few that I've put out that I kind of wish, could we just delete those off the face of the earth? But most of them have been very, very satisfying. You're listening to Carefree Highway Revisited. We'll be right back after a word from a podcast partner or two. 1 minute, you're a teacher preparing for the new school year. The next, you're transported to a fantastical realm shrouded in forgotten magic. The creatures around you think you're a long-vanished mage. You have no technology. You have no memory of how you got here, and no idea how to get home. All you have is misplaced magic. Haladar, the Last Surveyor, is the new fantasy novel by acclaimed author Rob Perrier. Available now on Amazon.com and robperrier.com.
Hi, this is Audie Martello, the host of the Mostly Folk podcast, a 60-minute foray into the music we all love. You will hear newly released albums, classic folk, country, and bluegrass music, as well as some traditional music that may or may not be true to the genre. Sometimes irreverent, often opinionated, but always entertaining. You may even hear a radio magic trick every so often, as well as numerous interviews via Zoom and telephone with established as well as indie artists. Mostly Folk is available wherever you listen to podcasts, and always at mostlyfolk.org.
Be known as a man who will always be candid on questions that do not relate. So as he's kind of wrapping up the song, it's pretty clear he's speaking to a son or another male, because be known as a man who will always be candid. Don't waste your time on mysteries or things that have no solution or that don't concern you. As Tim Walz would say, mind your own damn business, because time is the ultimate currency. You don't have that kind of time to waste because we don't know how long we're going to be around. Now, when Lightfoot wrote this, he was in his mid-30s. He's pushing 40. Maybe he was 36, 37. So he didn't quite have the idea that his time was running out the same way you and I do, if I can be so bold. You and I are looking at the downside of our careers. And also, your folks are still around and they're getting on in years. My folks have passed away. But I think the idea is that we don't necessarily have a whole lot of time to waste because we want to make the most of the time we have left.
I've always thought of that line also as being able to indulge others, be known as a man who's always been candid in questions that do not relate. I mean, when people are bringing up things that are of no import, I guess being candid might be telling them so. But I don't know. I'm not sure that's the wisest move. I'll have to leave that one because I'm talking myself out of my original understanding of it as I speak. So on questions that do not relate, what's your response to the BS that we all have to deal with, right? And how are you going to handle the mess? And hopefully you'll be candid about it. You'll call BS when you see it. How about that?
That works for me. Of course, this is at the end of the song, so who knows what he was thinking at that point. But he did end it poetically, I'll say that much. Well, the song, as you said, appeared on Summertime Dream, which came out in 1976. It was not released as a single, probably because it was too philosophically deep and too long, and you can't dance to it.
Yet it's part of that the whole folk rock movement.
Oh, totally.
Nobody expected to have it on American Bandstand or anything, but
right.
But there were all these great songwriters, singer-songwriter time who were releasing similar such singles. I think maybe he missed an opportunity there. This is a great song. I mean, nobody's going to dance to Fire and Rain either, right?
Well, no, but I think the point I'm making is that, number one, it's a cerebral song in a way that the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald is more of an emotional thing. Obviously, there's a verbal component to it. I mean, the lyrics really make the song.
Yeah.
But it's not as much as, I really have to think about what all of this means.
Well, he was a cerebral songwriter, too. I would put him in the same category as somebody like Richard Thompson, who writes really exquisite lyrics that aren't necessarily going to have a broad appeal, I guess.
Well, that you talked about broad appeal, and the other aspect of that is just the practicality. Back in those days, there were probably 2 singles that were released from each album. And they'd done Race Among the Ruins, and they'd done Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Now, we know how Wreck did as a single. I don't have any numbers handy on Race Among the Ruins, but there was probably not room for a third single in the eyes of Warner Brothers. So at that point, they may have just said, we don't have time to promote this. Just get back out on the road. Money, money, money. So somebody decided, whomever was managing him at the time, said, okay, I hear a single with Race Among the Ruins. I hear a single with The Wreck. I don't hear any other singles, so let's just move on to the next project. That may have been the practical consideration.
Still a damn shame, though.
I don't disagree with you. So there it is. The album did get to number 1 in Canada. It was number 12 on the US Billboard chart, number 63 in Australia. I can't find any statistics on how it did in the UK. I said that it wasn't released as a single. It wasn't even released as a B-side from everything that I can tell. I see potential of it as a B-side, but that was, good grief, 50 years ago. So we can't second guess that at this point. It was the 9th song on the album. So the third song, there were 6 songs on side 1, and I think there were 6 songs on side 2. So this is way buried down in, it's a deep cut.
The second to last song, right?
There may have been 1 or 2 others, but it's a deep album cut, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And the album was his most successful studio album, if you measure it by sales. And that brings us to your favorite musical aspect of the song. Now that we've kind of wrung the lyrics dry, what to you is your favorite musical aspect of the song?
Well, I think it's got to be Rick Haynes' bass.
How come?
The bass is very prominent in the mix, and I don't think it's accident, put it that way. And I think it actually lends itself to the message of the song. The song is a song of foundations, of having a strong moral foundation as you go through the challenges of life. And what is the greatest foundation except the bass? And that bass is so prominent in the mix. It really carries the song. I made a mix a few years ago for a friend of mine of songs where the bass drives the song, like Ramble On by Led Zeppelin. The bass is the most compelling aspect of the whole song. And I wouldn't go as far as saying it's the most compelling aspect of The House You Live In, but my music teacher, a guy named Daniel Yaritu, who's a brilliant guitar player, has spoken to me a lot about the relationship between instrument choices and mix choices and solo choices and how they contribute not only to the appeal of the song, but also to its meaning. And so this to me is the kind of thing that Daniel would encourage me to say. It's like, yeah, that bass serves as the foundation because the words are serving as a foundation. So that's what I love most about the mix in this song.
It makes me think that Lenny Waronker must have been thinking about the same way that you are. Okay, what is this song about and how do we translate that in? Gordon too, but Lenny was the official producer on this record. There are 2 things that I like about it. One is that it's written in 6/8 time, which Lightfoot doesn't do a whole lot of. He does some. So it's a rounder sort of feel to it. And then the other thing, the bass is very strong. The 12 string is also very strong. And I think they probably worked very hard to get that sound for the 12 string. And again, that says a lot for the people who were producing the album. Yeah. So those were the 2 things that I liked musically.
And I think we should also add, who was it played the steel guitar? Is that
Pee Wee Charles?
Man, that guy just added so much to so many of those songs. And this is another example of it. Just those little double stops he does where he plays 2 strings at once, but they're harmonized. You know, and it just fills out the song so beautifully. Yeah, that guy was badass.
He's still around.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I don't know if he's appearing with the Lightfoot band, but I hope he would be, at least from time to time. We've mentioned Pee Wee, we've mentioned Rick, we've mentioned Gordon. Terry Clements was the lead player for both acoustic and electric guitars. Barry Keane did drums and percussion, so they certainly all added elements. I'm mentioning them to be thorough, but I agree with you that the bass and the 12 string and the steel probably were the highlights of the whole production. He performed this song 111 times in concert. The first one was at the Mississippi River Festival on July 27th, 1976. So he's promoting the Summertime Dream album. And this was also during the summer. And then the last time he played it was about a year before he died. It was at the Paramount Theater in Charlottesville, Virginia on February 6, 2022. Martin, did you ever hear it performed in concert?
I don't remember. I'll have to look it up. I saw him, I think, 5 times. The first time was in 1976 or 77. No, might have been 78. I saw him at the War Memorial Opera House in San Francisco.
Okay. On
an epic junket with my famous Aunt Molly and my brothers. And then I've seen him numerous other times just over the years, hey, Gordon Lightfoot's in town. Let's go check it out. I don't recall, though. The Mighty Triumvirate was always, the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, If You Could Read My Mind, which I think he was doing as part of a medley the last time I saw him. He didn't do the whole song in Sundown, So
yeah, and that's the Holy Trinity right there. Really.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, but God, it's such a great song, though.
There were 4 covers that I could find, official covers. Ed Kilborn did one in 1977. That same year, Mac Wiseman, who's done a whole lot of covering of Gordon's music, did one. Kate Campbell did one in 2001. And then Gary Luck, my buddy from Down Under, and the Lightfoot Band did a version of it. We had Gary on the show in our second season, and they did a great version of this tune. Martin, have you heard any of the cover versions?
No, I haven't, but do any of them stand out? I mean, I could just go check all of them out, but
I'm going to let you sort of decide. I really liked what the Lightfoot Band did, and I have a copy of that CD that I will pass along to you.
2 of these are from as early as 1977.
That's right.
So right away, people looking at that song going, this is something I want to do.
Yeah, and that says a lot for the immediate impact. Although I haven't looked at the stuff that he did from solo, that he did from harmony, that he did from A Painter Passing Through, things when he was, shall we say, under the radar a little bit more. Obviously, it's a great song, but if he had put this out in his later years, would there have been that many covers that quickly? And my sense is maybe not.
Yeah. Boy kind of did it at the peak of his career, right?
My point exactly. Yeah. Martin, as we're kind of wrapping up, do you have any other closing thoughts on this song or its impact or its importance? Anything you want to say to sort of dovetail into our getting out of here?
I would just say to our listeners, or for those of you who aren't familiar with it, that it's a song worth listening to. It's a song that deserves more listening. It deserves a bigger audience. And so I'm willing to do whatever I can to contribute to that.
The man is Martin Brandt. The song has been The House You Live In. Martin, thank you so much for joining me today. We've had a chance to be in a listening forum in many cases, and I'm looking forward to having you on the show again next year.
And I'm looking forward to seeing you on stage again with the great Laura Brandt.
Well, our next episode will feature my guest, Barbara Johnson, who's been on the show before. And she and I will be talking about Carefree Highway from the Sundown album. Yeah, which we haven't done so far.
Not done that yet.
No, and that will be coming out in or about April of 2026. You can find all our episodes on www.lightfootpodcast.com, and I hope you'll tell someone about the show and give it a positive review wherever you get your listening matter. Until we meet again, this is Mike Messner reminding you, run for the roses, but don't forget to stop and smell them. We'll see you next time along the Carefree Highway.